I worked on this presentation last night, and I put a bit of work into branding the presentation and making it look nice. And despite the fact that I'm using a lot of Mastodon's color schemes and logos and everything, I just want to just quickly make it very clear that neither myself or any organizations that I'm associated with have any affiliation with Mastodon. Um, that everything that I'm sharing today is just of my own opinion as an individual. And for those that are aware of my involvement with Minnesota Furs, Minnesota Furs does not endorse or affiliate themselves with Mastodon in any official capacity. So the reason I'm doing this presentation is because, and I said it earlier, but for those that missed it, with the state of events with Twitter and my beliefs not really lining up one-to-one with Twitter, I figured it was a good time to try something new. And I've been using Mastodon. I've been on it for a year, but really been getting into it more for the past 3 months, and I've been quite enjoying it. Um, so real quick, since I know maybe not everyone here is familiar with what Mastodon is or what it means, Mastodon is basically it's just a free and open source social media platform, a lot like Twitter. And there's going to be a lot of comparisons to Twitter because I believe they got a lot of inspiration off of Twitter. Which, for those that aren't aware, a little fun fact: Twitter or the platforms like Twitter are referred to as micro-blogging platforms. So just like Twitter, Mastodon has um, tweets and users and timelines and everything. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But the nice thing about Mastodon is, unlike Twitter, where it's corporately owned and this big one central mass that they control and they own and they have the directives on, Mastodon is owned by groups of people referred to as instances. And we'll talk more about that later. We're going to talk about that now. Mastodon is decentralized, but it's at the same time centralized. And what that means is Mastodon has all these different instances that groups of people own and operate. So there's furry focused ones, there's software engineer focused ones, there's theatrical focused ones. But the nice thing about Mastodon, and something that I think there's a lot of misconception about, is even though there's all these different subset instances that people run, when you log in and you look at your timeline, you get a timeline of all the instances together because they all act as one in the end, which is nice. So you're not having to like hop between instances or anything. So the reason that decentralized is good is because Twitter is centralized and it's owned by Twitter, and Twitter does what they want. They put what ads they want on it. They can sell it to the highest bidder if they want, as recent events have shown, and they can decide solely of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. In Twitter, if you want a edit button, you're at the mercy of hoping that Twitter will eventually implement an edit button, or Twitter involving something like Twitter Blue to make revenue. Mastodon being open source is not like that. It's open source. It's contributed by people, by the community, so it's pretty good. So if there's a strong enough of an interest in a feature set, people can just go ahead and make it and implement it, and they'll adopt it. So um, there's a really good explanation video here. I'm sorry it's a QR code, and I can share it later, the link directly. But Mastodon has a really, really good video explaining of why the decentralized platform is beneficial to its users. So if anyone is interested in checking that out, scan the code, or I will share it later. So kind of when you're getting into Mastodon and you're ready to make the leap and start trying it out, you need to figure out where you're going to create your account, and you need to find an instance, or otherwise known as a federation, and create an account on it. The cool thing is there's a lot of furry ones. There's meow.social, there's howler.me if that's your thing, there's furry.engineer, and these are furry focused and furry welcoming instances that you can join. And there's other great resources to find an instance because there's so many. You can use a website like instances.social, which is a great way to find an instance. That is a web address. TLDs, or those end domains, are getting bigger, so even though it doesn't look like a web address, it is. So if you go to instances.social, they have a list of instances there that you can find. Or you can even use the official one by going to joinmastodon.com/servers, and they have a list of servers there that you can join. Now the tricky part, and I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but with the surge of interest in Mastodon, these instances can close their doors to new registrants, which is a little bit annoying. So if you wanted to go to meow.social and create an account on there, if they're closed to registrations, you're kind of out of luck. So either you need to wait for them to open back up, or B, if you have a friend already on like the meow.social or hower.me instance, they can send you an invite. The one I'm on personally, and the reason why I chose it, was Mastodon.social, which is a 501 nonprofit that is associated with Mastodon. And I figured, well, my best chances are there because A, it's open, B, it's kind of backed up by the open source project of Mastodon, and I figure it's going to be around for a pretty long time. So that's where I'm at. I know that I believe they're open for registrations now. But if they aren't, I have shared my invite code here to get you kind of in. And you can change instances later, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, and this is another link I'll share after. I'll share a lot of these links after. So a friend of mine actually last night brought up a really good concern of theirs, and they said if Mastodon is decentralized and it's all ran by people having a server that they're managing and maintaining, what stops them from just stopping maintenance on it and just getting rid of it or just taking it down? And that is a risk, and that's kind of the shitty thing about Mastodon is compared to Twitter. I mean, I guess Twitter could do the same thing as if they just shut down or they failed so hard that it's gone, but the same risk is kind of there with Mastodon. But the nice thing that I learned yesterday is the join mastodon.org servers to be listed on their website have to agree to their covenant, which basically kind of helps protect the users on those instances from sudden disappearance. And so their covenant is listed here on the right. It just basically says that they will give everyone 3 months of notice and everything, and daily backups, which is nice. So that is an option. And like I said before, worst case scenario, if for whatever reason you're not liking the instance or if it's slow, because it is ran by people, if their servers suck, it will run slower. You can always export your data and move it to a different instance. So that is an option if you ever wanted to. This is going to be especially useful if, like, for whatever reason, if you're on like the hower.me instance and they decide that they're not going to maintain it anymore. Ethically or not ethically, but to be good people, they should tell you, but you'll usually get some pretty good notice. So yeah, the other part of this presentation is finding your friends. So once you get on Mastodon, you have, I mean, just like when you get on Twitter for the first time, you have no followers and you have no people following you. You're not following anyone. But if you came from something like Twitter and you have 500 followers and watchers and over there, it would be nice if you can kind of migrate a little bit easier. Like Roy mentioned earlier, there's a lot of services out there that can help you find people that will scrape services like Twitter or Facebook or whatever to help find those users. What I used was a open source project called I think it's pronounced fedifinder.glitch.me. Again, something else I'll link at the end here. This was super useful because what I did is I connected my Twitter account so it can see all my followers and back and forth. And it gave me a CSV file that I could then go over to Mastodon and import. And it also let me click on those profiles so I can kind of like preview it real quick and see like, oh, is this the person I think it is? And I think it showed the icon and everything, but that was super useful. So if you want to kind of get your feet wet and get over faster, that's a great way. But honestly, I mean, I've had Twitter since my age is going to show here. I've had Twitter since I think like 2008. And honestly, starting kind of fresh and over is not the worst idea. So while you can import all your contacts, it would be maybe good to assess if that's really what you want to do. Being able to start over and kind of following who you want to is a better idea because I don't know about you guys, but back when I originally created my Twitter account, I wasn't entirely in the furry space and I lived in a different state and my interests and everything, they shifted a lot in the past uh, 10, 13, 14 years. So something to consider. So I'm going to just breeze through this real quick for those that aren't familiar with the interface of Mastodon here. It's very, very, very similar to Twitter. So if you're familiar with Twitter, you'll find yourself at home with Mastodon. When you log in, you get a timeline across all the different instances that you can see here, and it's very similar. You have on the side, you can create they call them toots. I think it's stupid, but instead of tweets, they're called toots, which I hope they rename because that's stupid. But you can, yeah, you can see everything here, and over on the right, I mean, this should look pretty familiar. It's got direct messages and everything that you know and love. And the post controls are also the same too, which is nice. So you can you got your reply button, you got your retweet or retweet button, you got your favorite button, bookmark, share, and everything else here, which is nice. And then, of course, if you click on a user, it's very similar to Twitter. You can see their timeline, you can see some stuff about them, you can follow them, and you can toot at them. I'm not kidding. It's actually called tooting. But yeah, it's pretty familiar, and you'll find yourself at home if you're familiar with like Twitter. You got your timeline down there, and I think that's about the basics. Is there? Well, I'll open the floor to questions. I by no means am a Mastodon like pro, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And if anybody gets on the platform and wants to follow me on Mastodon, feel free. Um, the format. Oh shit! I forgot to add a slide for this. Pardon my language, but the other thing to keep in mind is when you add people on Mastodon. Man, I really should have added a slide for this. It's not just the handle because, like with Twitter, everyone's on the centralized Twitter platform. So at Dr. Raccoon is going to make sense. I think I can see it if I go back here. Yeah, okay, here we go. So we can see here on this timeline that I mean, it's a little bit more annoying than like I guess this is another kind of issue is you need to include the instance name in the handle. So as you can see, for example, there's kokorimuscle at mastodon.lol. So just something to keep in mind if you're at a con and you're sharing your Mastodon accounts that you need to include your handle and instance name. So that's it. I guess if anyone has any questions, that's kind of like the high level overview of Mastodon. There's so much more you can do. Like for example, uh, I don't know. I find this cool, but your links on your Mastodon can be verified, so it will turn green. And so there's a lot more cool things you can do with Mastodon. And since it's open source and there's so much more interest in it, and anyone can contribute to it. I mean, they kind of vet what should be added and what shouldn't be. Like so you can avoid any like malicious contributions. But the cool thing that I've seen so far is since Mastodon's explosion a few months ago is the features onboarding into the platform have been so much faster because it's open source. Anyone can contribute to it and anyone can better the platform. So that's probably my software engineer side of me showing where open source software is awesome. But that's the other cool thing is I don't know if anyone noticed here, but on the timeline there's it's hard to see here, but there's no ads, which is another nice thing that I like about opposed to Twitter is Twitter makes their revenue from ads because they're a corporation. They need to make money. Mastodon being open source, there's no incentive for them to bring in revenue. So ads. That's all I got.
What question? Is there a Mastodon app?
There is a Mastodon app. Good question. There is an app. There's several apps for different platforms. So there's a Windows application. There's an official one for Android and iPhone or the App Store. Um, but the other cool thing is since it's I'm going to say this again, open source with a strong API backend. There's a lot of third-party clients as well. So on your phone or on your tablet, if you just search for Mastodon, you can find the official app. But if you want to go a little bit further, there's unofficial apps. I mean, just like Twitter, right? I mean, they got Plume and everything. But I think the official one is good enough.
Cool.
Great. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm going to kill the recording here. But again, I will post all the links in Discord that I provided here. And for those watching on YouTube, after we posted it, it should be in the description.